Good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to today's governing board meeting. Today is the 23rd. If you would rise, if you are able, and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. We have 8 directors here, and we should have one on Zoom. Director Novello, are you there?
I am indeed, President Biden.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we're going to move into 2.01. We have a commendation this morning to one of our master swimmers, to Gint Clifford. Gint, if you would mind joining me at the podium. Is this on? Hello? Okay, great. As you can see, we have many of the swimmers here from Master Swimmers. Yay! Welcome, everybody. I'm going to hand this to you.
Thank you.
Okay. And this is Gint Clifford. They say that when swimming in the water, there's no limit to how far you can go. But maybe here in Sun City West, we should say how fast you can go. Last February to March, the United States won an impressive 8 gold medals in the women's 85 to 89 age group at the 2024 World Masters Championship in Doha, Qatar. At that event, Sun City West master swimmer Gint Clifford secured 3 gold and 2 silver medals.
Here they are.
In fact, she medaled in every event she competed in. Gint is no stranger to swimming achievements, considering that she has 496 master swim meets under her belt, 236 individual and 64 relay top 10 achievements, over 8 years of All-American individual and relay honors, All-Star honors, and multiple master swimmer records. So today, the governing board adds its own small commendation to her vast swimming awards accumulation. Congratulations, Gint. We salute your incredible success and are proud to have you as a resident of our community.
Well, thank you. I'll just say just a few quick words, but before everybody sits down, I'd like all my swim teammates here to stand up, because you can't do this without good people. And these are all wonderful, wonderful people. And thank you, everybody. You know, I really am a product of Sun City West. Moved here 28 years ago in April. Went to a high school that had no sports at all for women. So by the time I got here, I just was lucky enough to run into a swim coach. So 28 years later, here we are. And thank you to everybody. Appreciate this a lot.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I thought that was a really nice way to start the meeting. So Pretty nice. Congratulations, Gint. Okay, so with that, we'll move into 3.01 for the regular governing board minutes approval. If there are no objections, corrections, or changes, they will stand as written. Okay, Karen? 3.02 for the special organizational meeting minutes. No corrections or changes. They will stand as written. And moving right along. 4.01 is revised policy CO3 for the standing committees with Vice President Jack Leary.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I move that the governing board approve the language revisions to policy C03 entitled Standing Committees of the Governing Board at section 2 and subsection 2.2 as redlined.
Second. Was that Dick?
Second.
Thank you, Dick. Yes, please.
So what those changes are is at 2.2, we remove the word one so that it's clearer that it's a maximum of 3 consecutive years on any committee, not just any one committee, any single committee. And the other, 2 other changes were to add 2.2.1, which says any period of a partial standing committee service during a 1-year period will count as a full year of service. The intent of that is that we're going to track it at a annual level rather than any individual month or week or day. And then the next change is, excuse me, that we added the word standing committee at the very end of that sentence. So it says, after serving 3 consecutive years on any governing board standing committee, a governing board standing committee member must stand down for a 1-year period before serving on any standing committee again. So that adding that third standing is the clarification there. And then, of course, the numbering changed for 2.2, 2.2.1 and 2.2.2 became the next number up. I'm not gonna. So those are the changes.
Any comments, directors? Director Hurley?
Yeah, I just wonder if this doesn't limit the ability of future directors to name their own committees. By saying you can't, it's on any committee. Somebody could be on golf one year, BNF the next year, charter clubs next year, and then they're not eligible on any of them for 1 year. So I think that I would like to strike that word any. I'm sorry, I want to re-add the one for any one governing board committee. If somebody's been on the same committee for 3 years, I see the idea of having them stand down. But if they're good people in their rotating committees, I don't see the reason why they have to stand down a year. That's just my opinion.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Director Leary?
I was just going to say the reason for this, Tim, is that we are in the good position of having quite a few people applying for committees. So I was just looking at the applications for this next round, and we've got between 18 to 50 people applying for committees. So it's not like we're hurting for people to get on committees.
But if if they're a good committee member, they should still be eligible to serve.
They are, but what we're saying is that we need to have more people get involved. You have the opportunity to get involved with this, so we don't have the same people serving over and over and over again, is what we're saying.
Okay. Director Schlemmer?
I just wanted to share, at the golf committee meeting, we had a member speak up on this particular issue, and I told him that I would share his thoughts with the board. This does not necessarily come as my view, but it does come as one of our members' views. And his concern, I think it's a little bit similar to what Director Hurley brought up. His concern was the loss of experience. And his thought also was that the chair does have the selection power, and so chairs can balance the committee as they see appropriate. So he personally did not feel that there was a need for the policy. I did tell him I would share his thoughts with the board.
Thank you. Any other comments from the directors? Director Rhodes?
Yeah, I think my feelings are probably in between both Alan and Tim's, that I understand why we want to limit participation to 3 years. Today, we don't have a problem with those wanting to step forward. And that's a good thing. That's a good problem to have. But on the same token, and I'm going to use the example of the Budget and Finance Committee. We're very, very selective on the Budget and Finance Committee because we want people that have esoteric experience in budget and finance. And regardless of the number of people, once push comes to shove, there's not really that many people out there. So from that perspective, from the chair of the BNF, that might be a unique thing, but on the same token, I can understand how we would limit BNF to 3 and all the committees to 3, but I don't see a problem with someone jumping off of BNF and saying, oh, I think I'd like to be on charter clubs now. You know, it's a different skill set, and it's really a different perspective as well. So to that degree, I would support Director Hurley's comments, and it's only a slight modification to what we have already.
Thank you. Any other comments? Director Hurley?
Yeah, my main concern is that this puts a limitation on future directors. We're making a decision that is going to stop future directors from doing something. And I think that's a bad policy for the board to have.
In what way are we affecting future directors?
As a committee chairman, you have the responsibility of choosing your committee, okay? If you're automatically going to take people out of the pool, that limits that director's ability. It limits the pool of people that he has to draw from. And if there's somebody that's an excellent committee member, has a lot of experience, a lot of unique talents in that area, he or she should be able to have that person on their committee. And I think limiting a future director's ability to do that is a bad decision.
Okay, thank you. Are there any audience comments before we take a vote on this? As per policy, when you come to the mic, please give your name, rec card number, and direct all comments to the chair.
Good morning, Madam President and Board. I do have a little input on that, and I have to say I am in agreement with what Director Hurley brought up. I see that when you join a committee, your first year is usually pretty awkward, and having all of you up there, I think you realize that too. Then you start getting the hang of it near the end of the year, and I think it's really beneficial to do another year there. The way I see it is, if I could only stay on a committee for 3 years, and I want to stay on that committee and then better myself to maybe eventually be able to run for the governing board, I can't get that further experience unless I take an entire year off. Or what I could do, knowing I could only have 3 consecutive terms, I could join BNF for 1 year, then I'd quit now that I've got just a little experience. Then I could go to properties for a year, I could quit, go to charter club for a year, then I have to wait for a year to apply for the governing board. I think it does harm our pool of applicants. I think we need to have a balance of people with some experience while taking new people on. I totally agree, you got to bring in new people and teach as many people as are willing to come in to do it. But I think we're losing a lot of expertise by saying it is limited. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for clarification, you don't have to stand down a year before you run for the governing board.
Well, it does say, okay,
It's a standing committee.
just for standing committee, so you could go
Correct.
from 3 years. Thank you.
You're
Thank you for
welcome,
that.
correct.
Bill Weaver, 124087. The arguments against this seem to be the same ones that people bring up for term limits for Congress. I am well in favor of term limits for Congress, and I see the same problem with this. There are plenty of people out here, and there have been people rejected who are well qualified for these committees. So I think this would be a very good change. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, Jack, if you wouldn't mind reading the motion again, then we'll go ahead and take a vote. Thank you, Karen. As it, okay. Do you want to, Jack, do you want to take a, we could take a vote as to whether or not to amend the vote per Director Hurley's request?
The amendment would be to reinsert the
Right.
word "one" governing
Right,
board.
to reinsert the word "one." Do you want to read it with that clarification?
Is there a motion to amend?
Yeah, Christine, I'm going to have Jack make the motion right now.
Okay, the amended motion is I move that the governing board approve the language revisions to policy C03 entitled Standing Committees of the Governing Board at section 2 and at section 2, with the exception of 2.2 where we reinstate the word any one governing board standing committee, where one is the added word.
Is there a second?
So I'll second it.
Thank you. Director Hurley?
Director Vine, correct, Chairman Vines, may I ask a point of clarification? So this does, even if we put the one in there, there's still the term limit of 3 years, period.
Correct.
So regardless, they can only serve 3 consecutive years. So that could be BNF, Charter Club, Sports Pavilion.
Correct.
Yes, be 1 on each, and that's 3 consecutive years.
No.
But we have a term limit of 3 years.
So the way, if by adding back in the word one, that means that somebody could serve on a committee 3 consecutive years and then have to have a year to stand down.
Right.
But if they serve, they could continue to serve, they could do 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year,
Okay,
and not stand down in between.
thank you.
Excuse me, President Vines, I have a comment.
Director Novello?
Thank you. This is, I understand what we're trying to accomplish, and I'm not trying to be, I am not an authority on Robert's rules. I believe, I'd like our parliamentarian or someone with some parliamentary experience to weigh in. I believe the correct procedure would be to vote first on the amendment and then to vote on the amended motion, but
No.
I have a different opinion
No.
on the motion,
Other way
and,
around.
but that's my, I just wanted to ask for clarification.
No, that's wrong. But thank you.
So okay, so we're voting on the new motion without,
With the,
discussing the amendment. Thank you.
with the amendment. Correct. Correct. Did you catch that, Director Novello?
I did not, but I take your, All I needed was your response, President Filings. Thank you very much.
Okay, do you need me to have Director Leary read the motion again?
No, I'm clear. Thank you.
Okay. Karen, are you clear on the motion? Okay. Director Schlemmer?
So I'm a little confused as to whether this actually accomplishes what Director Hurley was trying to accomplish. Because based on, I thought I understood that what you were trying to accomplish was if someone served for 3 years on, say, the golf committee, and then wanted to move to budget and finance, they wouldn't have a stand-down year. But under this, they would still have that stand-down year. I guess I'm confused as to what it was.
And that's fine, I'm fine with that, but it's just, if you do it on any committee and people are rotating committees, they still should be able to serve on another committee. That's my point.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, so I just,
Hold on. Director Piaskowski?
good job. So someone serves on golf for 3 years. They have to stand down for a year before standing on another standing committee. If they go from properties to golf to charter clubs, 3 years, one, they still have to stand down
No,
because they didn't stand
not 3 consecutive years.
on one committee. Ah, okay. Consecutive, that's the key word.
Director Rhodes?
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure that I understand this. I thought I did twice. So my point is the same as the gentleman that talked about term limits. You know, I think there should be term limits. I think that's what we're getting at, is term limits. Now, whether it's whatever combination of 3 that is in the committees, I'm okay with that. And then they can drop off for a year. So they can go charter clubs, you know, bang, 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 and then they're off for a year. Or they, whatever the combination is. So I believe in the term limits, okay? And I think that's the original intent of this, was term limits.
That's correct. So Director Leary, that, if I'm not mistaken, that would put us back to
So
it should say any one, and then the term would be any one of those 3 committees, or any one of the standing committees, but 3 consecutive years. Correct, Director Leary?
So the key word here is one. So the original wording said that a committee members may serve a maximum of 3 consecutive years on any one governing board standing committee. And at the end of that 3 years, they would have to stand down. That's 3 consecutive years on the same committee. If we remove the word one, they can rotate between the 5 committees and never, after, as long as they don't hit 3 consecutive years, they could continue to serve and rotate amongst all 5 committees for perpetuity.
That's assuming that the chairman picks them.
Assuming that the chairman picks, and that's
Right.
correct. That is correct. So what this does is term limits, and depending upon if we add the word one or leave it out, it depends upon, and assuming that the chairperson keeps, picking that person, you could have somebody serve in perpetuity on any or all of the 5 standing committees. If you remove the word one.
Director Piaskowski?
Okay, so if I served on BNF for 2 years, then went to charter clubs, then came back to BNF then is that is that my third year? So, yeah, this is not, yeah.
Right.
Okay, just trying to clarify that.
Madam President,
Director Hurley?
I think everyone's forgetting that people just can't automatically put themselves on a committee.
Correct.
It's up to the chairman to pick that person. Having a chairman have the flexibility of picking whoever he wants, that is the key here. It's not that,
Correct.
just because you apply to a committee doesn't mean you get on it. You've got to pass the chairman's test, so to speak.
Right.
I'd like to call for the vote, too.
No, we're going to go to the vote. Oh, Director Hammond? You've been quiet, so it's nice to hear from you.
I'm on the different side, I can talk now.
Okay.
I'm reading this maybe a little different than anybody. Committee members may serve a maximum of 3 consecutive years on any governing board standing committee. Okay, that means if you were 2 years on budget and finance, and the third year you were on charter clubs, that's 3 consecutive years on, and you'd have to take a year off then. If you put the 1 in there, then it means you can only do it on consecutive years on budget and finance. You didn't go 3 consecutive years, you'd never have a stand-down year. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. That is
Again,
correct.
it's up to the chairman to pick them.
Yeah, but it's up to the chairman to pick them, that's true.
So,
I think,
Director Leary, Director Schlemmer, did you have a question?
I do, and my question is this. If I serve on 3 different committees for 3 years, in the 4th year I could go to another committee. Correct. But if I serve on budget and finance or golf or whatever for 3 straight years, I have to stand down for a year. Why would we create that limit? Why wouldn't we allow that person, let's say I'm on budget and finance for 3 years, to then decide, I still want to be involved in the committee, I still want to serve? Why are we saying if you serve 3 years on the same committee, you can't go to any committee, yet if I go and jump around every year, I would think we would try to do.
You don't have the ability to jump around.
Well, I mean,
That's what I'm
assuming
saying.
you're selected. But I guess my concern is, if I'm somebody who happens to get selected for committee for each of 3 years, let's assume I get selected by the chair, because I agree with your comment on that. I can then go a 4th year, a 5th year, a 6th year, a 7th year, assuming I'm selected each of those years. But if I happen to be somebody who's been on, say, budget and finance, and I've been selected for 3 years, I feel like now we're punishing the individual who is dedicated to being involved by saying you have to stand down, regardless of whether you get selected or not, you have to stand down.
I'd like to strike the new 2.12. I don't see why we have to stand down a person that serves 3 years on a committee. You're going to have at least 2 directors be chairmen during that 3 years. So anyway.
We'll have at least one director be the committee chair. It'll be up to the governing board president that year to decide whether or not they're going to have a co-chair. So they're not up, it's up to the president. So, and we do have some online comments. So, Alan, if you wouldn't mind reading those, please, and then we're going to go right to the vote.
Okay, so I will start with Gary Bach, 135435. You have a 1-year stand down, then you can apply again. Also, the governing board members are only allowed 3 years. Scott Oblander, 139839, agree with Director Hurley. Change just for the sake of change is not always the best policy. And then Dennis Horvath, 127115, I too believe in term limits. Can we just say no more than 3 consecutive years or 1 term on any one committee?
Thank you, Director Schlemmer. So we need to go, I would like to go to the vote. And so the question, sorry. Okay, we'll take one more comment and then we're going to go right to the vote.
My name is David Bennett, 1378887. I know it's a theoretical possibility, but without this term limits, you get 5 or you get a group of governing board members who like a select group uh, 9 per committee, 7 per committee or whatever, and they just rotate them and keep those same all the time and never get anybody from the outside ever to come in. And that way you can run the thing you want without any input from anybody else other than the people that you pick yourself. So I believe in term limits.
Thank you. Okay. So Director Leary, if you wouldn't mind reading the motion one more time, please, so that we have clarification on exactly what we're voting on, and explain what a yes vote means and a no vote means, please.
And I'm going to
Clarify.
I'm going to reread the amended motion.
Thank you.
I move the governing board approve the language revisions to policy C03 entitled Standing Committees of the Governing Board at section 2 in subsection 2.2 as redlined and as amended, so that 2.2 reinstates the word one governing board, so that the term limit applies only to those people who serve 3 consecutive years on the same committee. 2.2.1 stays as redlined, and 2.2.2 stays as redlined. So a yes vote would be to approve the amended motion, which returns the word one in 2.2, and a no vote would deny that.
As I understand it, that's what that means. A yes vote approves the amendment, leaving the word, putting the word one back in there, and no vote reverts it back to the original revision. Is everybody clear on that? Okay, Director Williams.
Yes.
Yes.
Director Rowe?
Yes. Yes.
Director Schlemmer?
Yes.
Director Leary?
No.
Director Hammond?
Yes.
No.
Director Novello?
No.
So by a vote of 5-3, it will pass with the amendment, adding the word one back in. Do I have the vote correct, Karen? Thank you. Okay, thank you, directors. With that, we will move on to 4.02 with CFO Cliff Swan for the April 2024 financial year-to-date review.
Thank you, President Vines. Good morning, Governing Board, and good morning, community. I'm here to present the April year-to-date financials, and excited to do that. We got a you'll see there's we got a pretty good year going to budget and the prior year, and all great news for the community and for the reserve fund. So with that said, we'll get started. So this presentation was given at BNF on Tuesday, and we're presenting it here as well. Today we're going to talk about our April year-to-date financial results and the top portion of the income statement, revenues and expenses. We're going to compare that to current month, current month to budget, and then prior year, and then year-to-date to budget and prior year as well. We're going to move down in the capital section, which directly impacts the reserve fund as well. We'll talk about that compared to a budget and prior year. And then we'll talk about our capital budget, our capital improvement budget, where we're at year to date. And I'll give an estimate on where we'll finish for the year. on that as well, and then we'll talk about the reserve fund and the fully funded balance. So on to the summary of revenue, actual versus budget. In April, we finished 32,000 favorable to budget on roughly 2.8 million in revenue, and so that was very favorable for the month of April. Moving down into the expense section, pretty much right on budget. Expenses on 2.3 million in expenses, finished 22,000 favorable. Continue to struggle on utilities a little bit, but everything else pretty much right on budget. Overall, 54,000 favorable at 557,000 income, cash inflow, operating cash inflow. Keep in mind, that's with 80,000 moved down to the capital section in estimated reserve fund. So that leaves a balance of even moving that out of the revenue section down to the capital section still leaves a positive balance, cash inflow of 557,000, and that will get combined year to date and moved to the reserve fund as well. Comparing that to prior year, 41,000 favorable with the budgeted operating expense increases. So switching to year to date, we're 90,000 favorable in revenue year to date to budget on roughly 24.4 million in revenue. I will say down at the bottom, there's a unfavorable variance of 57,000 in the rec events, interest, and other. That's mainly due to, we've talked about this for the year, but our events, we had budgeted, we had come in really strong on our events revenue, and unfortunately did not hit our target for that. We made some changes this year in the budget for next year, and we're looking forward to seeing how that goes next year. But I will say also that we have our operating cash is sitting in T-bills, the unused portion of our operating cash. We keep about 2 million in there to operate, and then we invest the rest of it in short-term T-bills, and those are going to be coming to maturity here in June, and we can expect 180,000 in additional interest revenue to hit the revenue section in June, which is very, very good. So a little more to make up that variance in that section, that category. On the expense side, 338,000 favorable in expenses. We have some, you can see utilities has kind of been a struggle all year, and landscape maintenance pretty much offset that with the favorable prices of seed. So 338,000 year-to-date favorable in the expense category. For an overall 428,000 favorable. And year-to-date, we have 1.3 million. That's in addition to the 80,000 roughly a month that we've been putting aside in our estimated reserve fund allocation. So whatever's left in there, we will operate at a cash outflow for the next 2 months, May and June. So that 1.3 will drop, but there will be money left over. There will be funds left over and a operating cash outflow for the year. Inflow for the year, and that will get swept up with the estimated reserve fund allocation and go right into the reserve fund, which is pretty great. So comparing the year to date to last April, we are 340,000 favorable to last April. Year to date. Again, we talked about the budgeted increase in wages and benefits, but utilities was really a struggle for us this year. But we're hoping that the summer heat that we got last year in the late fall will subside this year, and we won't have that much kilowattage usage, but that'll yet to be seen. So switching down in the capital section of the income statement, I kind of mentioned it earlier. In the capital section, everything that happens down in the capital section impacts the reserve fund, impacts it dollar for dollar, because we pay for operations from the operating revenue, but the APF revenue, the investment, realized and unrealized, as well as the investment income, all impacts the reserve fund dollar for dollar. So every positive or negative variance here has a direct impact on the reserve fund. So in the APFs for the month of April, we had a positive favorable variance of 100,000. So that's, of course, a very good thing. I've talked about the estimated reserve fund allocation. You'll see that there. That's right on budget. And then we did experience a realized gain of 17,000 and a market change unfavorable of 665,000 in our reserve fund. I will say through this point in May, we've gotten 500,000 of that valuation back in May. So we're experiencing some volatility with what's going on in the foreign wars and as well as politics and things going on right now. So there's going to be some ebbs and flows in that reserve fund account. I encourage you to watch the Cap Trust presentation that we had on Tuesday. If you didn't see it, go back and watch it on YouTube. Very informative and very good. But that's how we finished out the month of April when it came to our reserve fund valuation change. Overall, 526,000 unfavorable to budget. Looking at prior year, 699,000 unfavorable, 135,000 up in APF fees, which is of course real dollars. You'll see we had a better valuation in our reserve fund last April, which is causing the main variance in the capital section year over year. Year to date, though, we take a look at our APF fees, 687,000 favorable. We budgeted 1,014. APF fees were on pace for 1130-ish, which is great. It's 5,000 per APF fees. Per APF fee, that increases over budget. So 687,000 favorable year to date, which is great. Investment income, 850,000 in investment income this year from interest and dividends on our reserve fund, which is almost 300,000 better than last year. So that's great. And then year to date, unrealized gain of 141,000, realized loss of 233,000. And then down in the bottom, you'll see gains and losses on sale of assets and other. The other that's in there is the Arizona Office of Tourism. We were able to take in those funds at 210,000 because we completed those water savings projects on our golf course. So that, of course, adds to the reserve fund. We use capital to pay for that, but we get reimbursed for that, and it goes right in the reserve fund as well. So 1.3 million favorable to budget in our capital section of the income statement. And then compared to prior year, 678,000 favorable compared to prior year in this section. Almost $1 million more in APF fees through April than prior year. I just talked about it, where we have 878 versus 845 APF fees through April. And reserve fund change about steady at 94,000 variance, unfavorable variance. We'll see what happens as we complete the fiscal year. And then 272,000 more in investment income. So overall revenues over under expenses is favorable by 1.7 million compared to budget, and favorable by $1,018,000 compared to prior year. Switching over to our capital improvement budget, we had in fiscal year 2024 roughly $5.5 million earmarked for capital improvement projects, and we're tracking at about 557,000 favorable variance to that. So we're going to be able to complete these projects at $500,000 in savings compared to budget. And then you'll see on this list, the items that are highlighted in yellow are the completed items, and then you'll see the PO'd items. And you can go down to the bottom and you see that projected variance, how we get to that 557,000. I will say that 557,000 favorable variance is after paying for Echo Mesa well pump and long bowling benches and lawn bowling roof restore, which we went to facts and findings to pay for those with savings. So it would have been roughly 100,000 higher if we hadn't paid for those things that weren't necessarily in the budget. Okay, so looking at our allowances, we had 400,000 in allowances, capital improvement allowances budget for this year. We've issued 285,000 in POs, and we have 115,000 left through April. There was one addition on here from last month, from March, and that was the Pebblebrook discharge assembly replacement. We've had a bad year on well pumps, unfortunately, this year, but that's kind of how it goes. We don't know when they're going to break, but that was a component that we needed to repair at Pebblebrook to keep our well pump in balance and alignment, and that $17,000 investment would save us another 100,000 if we didn't complete that repair. So we did that repair on that discharge assembly in April and paid for that with allowance funds. I will say we anticipate spending about another 65,000 in there in equipment, and at the men's club flooring, we're gonna put that back to LVT from carpet just because it's just not holding up. So we should end up the year at about a 50,000 savings in our allowance fund, assuming no other well pumps go between now and June 30. Okay, so it's all about the reserve fund, and let's see what the impact of those are. You can see here all the items in green are favorable compared to budget, and with all these favorable items, we anticipate being at 49%, which is what we budgeted. I will say, this could go up to 51% depending on what happens in the investment account over the next 2 months. So we're eagerly awaiting the next 2 months to see what happens there. But overall, we're in a very, very good position. So that concludes my presentation.
Super, great, thank you, excellent. I'm going to go first to Director Novello. Any questions for Cliff?
No questions. I watched the meeting before this one. Thanks, Cliff. Great update.
Great.
You're welcome.
Directors, any questions or comments? Director Rhodes?
Thank you. I do have some comments. I want to reiterate Cliff's statement a few minutes ago. If you haven't had the opportunity to go back and watch the CAP Trust presentation that they presented to us at Budget and Finance Committee on Tuesday, it is well worth your time, especially if you're really interested in the performance of our investments. We're at a 90-10, which means it's 90% fixed income and 10% equity. And in anybody's book, that is conservative. We had the perfect storm happen when we converted from what was a 60-40 to a 90-10 several years ago, in that the bottom of the bond market fell out. And we had unrealized losses. And it's something that happened to the entire market. It didn't just single us out and to say, this happened to you. This happened to the entire bond market. One of the things that we've discussed this with CAP Trust any number of times, and one of the things that Nate Erickson, who was the principal for CAP Trust for our account, one of the things that he said, and this isn't verbatim, but this is words to the effect, that he said, don't panic. If your investment objectives have not changed, steady the course. Historically, the bonds will come back, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing that right now, and we'll be able to close that gap pretty closely. I think we're within probably $500,000 right now. But it's well worth your time to watch that Cap Trust presentation. I can't say. And the other thing I want to say is that from someone that has been watching our reserve fund and the percent of the FFB, I'm thrilled to see where we are today. Anytime we can see that we're in the high 40s, and Cliff has even said low 50s, and I'll hold you to that, my friend.
Okay.
Okay? So that means that we're healthy. We're financially healthy. We don't have to reach into our till and to pay the mortgage. So we're strong there. So that's really all I wanted to say. I'll talk more when I make the motion for the new budget. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Directors, any other comments? No? Super, great. Thank you. Appreciate it, Cliff. It was a great report.
I'll just stay up here for the budget.
Yeah, you can stand right there. Because Director Rhodes is up next for 4.03 for the total budget approval for fiscal year 2024, 2025.
This is the time that we've all been waiting for. Okay,
Yep, this is the time.
okay.
This is exciting.
Is it okay?
Yeah, please go.
This is the time we've all been waiting for. We've canceled vacations and we've made sure that we're all here. Christine even is in the middle of her vacation, but she's took the time to be able to dial in for that. So this is a very important discussion we're going to have. And I'm going to make a motion that I move that the governing board approve the RCSCW fiscal year 2024-25 total budget plan.
Second. Thank you, Director Williams. All right. Any last
I do
questions?
want to make a couple.
Okay, go ahead, Director Rhodes.
So I'm going to be very brief. This budget was presented to us by Mr. Schwend on February the 22nd. Now, behind that went some very intensive analysis, mainly by some of the people in that back row back there. Those are your superstars from staff that have examined their own budgets internally. And they took a hard look. And Mr. Schwend put together a budget that he presented to us. We challenged him on it. We challenged multiple points on it. It has been publicly discussed, at least I know in Budget and Finance, at least 7 or 8 times, not to mention every other committee and the governing board. So we've seen this publicly probably 15 times. So this isn't new. Okay, there's a couple things that I want to point out that I think that are important. First of all, we changed the amount of our asset preservation fee from last year from $4,200 to $5,000. So we do see an increase in APFs. And much of it's coming from that $800 increase. Okay, but that's a critical thing because that goes right into the reserve fund. We are proposing an increase in dues from $540 to $570. Okay. The golf rounds, our golf committee, plus there's a golf council. I don't know if they were engaged with determining the rounds, but they've come up with the projection for golf rounds. And that makes a lot of difference for us, especially when it's 320,000 rounds. All you have to do is to multiply it times the green fee. They have submitted changes for the golf fees, and they're very, I would say, modest at most. Our bowling lines, we've done the same type of analysis on the performance and the demand in the bowling alley. And even we've looked at our facilities rental fees. And for the most part, they have stayed stable. The part that's really probably the most difficult is power and people. We've talked about that all the time. That's the highest percentage of our dollars. is power and people. We know that wages are going up. As a matter of fact, we even have a contingency plan should this $18 an hour proposal come to life. Will it come to life today? Maybe, maybe not. Will it come to life eventually? You better believe it. You better believe it. We're going to see something will always come, and will present us with an issue that we have to deal with, and we've been doing that. We have increases in our health insurance for our employees. We have increases in our workman's comp, and we have increases in property. And those are things that we can't control for the most part. We can look at the health insurance, we can look at the workman's comp, and I know that our HR people are looking at that to see if we can help to work smarter, not harder, and be safer when we do work. We have also applied an overall inflation factor of 3% for the remaining non-labor components. One last comment that I'm going to have here that will kind of help wrap all of this up. We did things that you don't probably even recall. How many of you participated or heard of our credit card discussions? I'm going to quote Jack Leary. When Jack Leary, the last time that we even talked about credit card discussions, he threw his hands in the air and he says, credit cards? I don't want to hear anything else about credit cards. Yeah, it was just kind of the sense of, that's the level of frustration that we have with that. Obviously, we've incorporated into the operating budget. We also looked at something that we thought was very novel, and we even had a working group on it that Director Novello served as our advisor on, is for a financial indicator. Is there some indicator that will help us in making a determination of how we should gauge our own budget? We looked at that. There have been any number of configurations, and really what we came back to was we think that we have a pretty good handle on this. We have a considerable amount of historical data. We have a tremendous historical intellectual content that understands what our demands and what our requirements are. So at that, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to tell you that I believe the budget that has been produced is a comprehensive analysis of our own expenditures. It's a frugal look at the labor costs. It's a frugal look at supplies and the costs that we have. So at that, I'm going to wrap this up and just say that those are my comments for the FY 24-25 budget.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Any other comments from directors before we go to online comments? Okay, Director Schlemmer, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Okay, we do have let me just make sure. We do have two online comments. First one is from Dennis Horvath, 127115. If we're so healthy that it may not hurt, then it may not hurt to explain again to the members why we have to raise dues. Again, I am sure their inquiring minds would like to review. Thanks. I believe you just did that. And then the second one is from Bruce Lees, 135422. With almost a $500K positive cash inflow through April, why can't the board reduce the impact of dues increases to owners to that amount instead of putting those funds into the reserve fund? That's all the comments.
All right. Cliff or Director Rhodes? Either one
I
of
do
you.
have one housekeeping item.
Okay.
Last we presented this budget, there were some questions on the rental rates, and there was a typo as well in the capital improvement section in terms of a classification of an item. So those have been fixed. Specifically regarding the rental rates, we aligned the rental rates for clubs and members mid-year in this fiscal year. So we did not update the sheet to show that. So we did not add any budget item to increase those rates, and that was a reporting error on the finance team, and we've corrected that in this budget packet.
Thank you, Cliff. That
You're
is
welcome.
one of the first things I checked when we got the package, so I appreciate you bringing that forward. Director Hurley.
Yeah, I have a question for Cliff. Under special events in golf and the sports pavilion, we're budgeting a loss? Can you explain that to me?
Well, I think in special events I'd have to take a look at that. But I believe what we do is what gets rolled up into that special events is the entertainment that happens at the sports pavilion. So it really is a contra revenue account to go against the revenue generated in that. So that's for sports pavilion, and then it must,
Golf
does that
is
roll up?
$3,000 negative?
It's another contra revenue thing. I don't know exactly what it is on the spot, but I can tell you what that is. But it's an offset to revenue for golf, for the golf rounds that happen in whatever tournament happens, whatever happens in golf. That's what that is.
Does this pay for prizes for the tournaments?
Yes.
All right, Pat says yes.
Pat
So,
said- Pat
Yeah,
is-
it's
yes.
contra revenue stuff. It's to offset the revenue that happens at those special events. It's just how when we book special events, even with the special events department, all the costs associated with those events go against the events revenue. And then in golf and sports pavilion, we don't book the revenue in events revenue because they translate to rounds and lines of golf. I'm sorry, lines of bowling and rounds of golf.
okay, maybe you can explain it to me later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Any questions from the audience before we do our vote, which I'm very eager to do? So, Director Rhodes, if you wouldn't mind reading the motion one more time, please, and we'll do our vote. Thank you.
The motion is for the FY 24-25 budget. I move that the governing board approve the RCSCW fiscal year 2024-25 total budget and financial plan.
It's pretty straightforward. Yes vote, we're going forward. No vote, you know where that means. I'm going to start over here. Director Piaskowski,
No.
Director Hammond. Yes, yes, it passes.
Yes.
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 Double yes.
Oh, y'all are going faster than I can write, by the way.
Christine?
Director Novello,
Yes.
thank you, appreciate it. Let me make sure I have it, everybody down. This was, yeah, but I just, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's correct. All right, so by a vote of 7-1, Karen, that's correct? The fiscal year 2024-2025 budget will pass. Thank you very much, directors. I appreciate it. And staff, thank you. This is an outstanding budget. I appreciate all the hard work that you put into this. This is a wonderful budget going forward. Thank you. With that, we'll move forward to 4.04, the June 20th Owner Annual Meeting and final Governing Board meeting of the year. This will be at Palm Ridge. So I urge everybody to attend. It's quite exciting. With our GM, Olson, is there anything you'd like to say about that?
we'll be working together to create a opportunity for people to look back at and actually enjoy the contributions of staff and the board on the successes of last year and look forward to opportunities. I think President Vines will be discussing that, correct? And that'll be a great opportunity to see what we're working on and what we're projecting for the future. And it's always exciting to have that opportunity. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So again, that's on June 20th, 9 a.m. at Summit A, I'm guessing A and B, or the whole hall, I'm guessing, at Palm Ridge. So hopefully we'll see everybody there. And I'm assuming it's going to be live streamed as well. Right? Okay, thank you, Martin. So with that, we'll move on to 5.01, which, Director Rhodes, I'm going to throw it back to you for the March and April 2024 financial
Thank you. This is
reports.
really a housekeeping chore. This is the financial report filings. The March and April 2024 financials have been reviewed and accepted by the Budget and Finance Committee, and they have been filed.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that. Moving on to 6.01, Director comments. I'm going to start with Director Novello.
I just look forward to seeing all of my fellow, or as many of my following, let me try that again. I look forward to seeing as many of my fellow residents, homeowners as possible on June 20th. I really hope to see Palm Ridge full this year with people interested in our community. I will see you all there and at all of our upcoming meetings as well. No other comments. Thank you, President Vines.
Thank you. Director Williams?
No comments.
Thank you. Director Hurley?
No comments, but I do have a question to pose to you, Madam President. Would you mind
Now or
inquiring? Yes,
later?
would you mind inquiring with Director Piskakowski what she found objectionable with the budget?
Director Piaskowski, do you mind sharing why you were a no vote on the budget?
Sure. I know I'm new to the board, and I've been to a lot of meetings for budget and financing. The fact of the matter is that I'm just not too sure that we have really looked at all of our expenses that we could cut and looked at everything that we need to do. And so that's, and I'm very appreciative that the Finance Committee has done the whole homework on the $18 minimum wage coming up, that kind of thing. And we also had a comment online that, if we're saving $500,000, is that what we're saving? That why are we increasing it? We just keep increasing. And so I just think that we need to really start looking at a lot of expenses that we have. One is our HR committee. We don't have an HR committee right now, but that would be something that we should maybe bring back as a special committee with a hiring of a new general manager. It would be kind of nice to look to see where all of our employees work efficiently, not efficiently, that kind of thing. We might be able to cut some expenses that way.
Thank you, Director Piaskowski. You're welcome, Director. Director Rhodes? Is there no comment coming?
I'm pleased that that 7 of the governing board members were unanimous in passing the budget. It's probably one of the best budgets, most sound budget that we've had. We've publicly discussed this since February and even before then. So hopefully that we'll be able to have more insight with all of our board members as they get more experience and see how the system is working. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. I keep forgetting. Ken, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, I don't.
No,
At
no
this point,
comments?
thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Director Schlemmer?
So similar to some of my colleagues, I want to echo my appreciation to the entire staff for putting together the budget and all of the hard work. Very much appreciated. And also the work of the Budget and Finance Committee in putting together the budget as well. And I am very pleased with where the budget ended up. I'll be candid, none of us likes to increase dues. None of us likes to pay increased dues, but the reality is that particularly in a year of significant inflation that has hit all of us in all other areas, it hits the association as well. And, you know, every time I think about the cost of living here, I look around and I look at the quality of the community that we live in. And this community is now 45, 50, almost 50 years old. And it is as competitive today as it was the day it opened. And that very much goes to the significant contributions into investments and into reserves and into keeping our facilities up. That all takes money, unfortunately. But as a result, it also improves the value of our homes, the marketability of this community to future generations. So I'm very pleased to continue with this budget, building a greater and greater Sun City West.
Thank you. Director Leary?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. Getting to this budget was a lot of work. And I want to remind people that 3 years ago at this meeting, the board was scrambling on the back of an envelope to come up with, I believe it was the dues amount at that time, doing some quick math. That was one of the most embarrassing things I had ever seen from a governing board. And I am so pleased that we have gotten beyond that and gotten the process down so that we have this solid budget before us. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Director Leary. Director Hammond?
No comment.
Director Pieskoski?
No comment.
Thank you. Any audience comments?
How could I leave without another comment? And it won't be about credit cards.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. Name and
Bill
record
Weaver,
number.
124087. Just regarding the budget and something, maybe it's been here, but I just haven't noticed it. Where the increases specifically are occurring that raise the dues and raise the APFs, and to differentiate between what's R&R and what's new, such as, would there be an APF expense increase or revenue increase the same as it is today if there was no new spending, no new capital? Are we adding assets in a time when we can't really afford new assets, and that's causing APFs to go up and also the dues to come up? It would be nice to see when there is a dues increase, just for the public, just to see, put in their line, this is from operating expenses, salaries, this and that, this is what's causing. I would expect year to year to see an inflationary increase in dues. I mean, just as a practical person, I expect that. The large increase in APFs, to me, signaled a way to compensate for perhaps runaway spending on new stuff that affects the reserve fund, and it's to keep the reserve fund where it needs to be. So we're getting more revenue from APFs to take care of spending that maybe we shouldn't be doing on new things. I also get alarmed when we don't spend money on things that are R&R where we've got the money, because today's dollars are worth more than tomorrow's dollars. Spend them today on R&R and don't wait, don't pass them down the road. I think they cost more later, always. Those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Kellis, 129120, Madam President, Board, and our new interim general manager, Ken, welcome. I just wanted to say, again, thank you to all these staff people who have helped us go through this budget rigorously, and it's been a great presentation by Cliff over and over and over again. Thank you, and great responses and answers we received. I do want to thank all of you for stepping up and being on the governing board. It's a difficult situation to be in, and you are appreciated. But there's one other group that I think really gets overlooked a lot, and it's kind of sad because I even hear, murmurs about them, and we really shouldn't be doing that. We are one team in this community, and we should be that way. And that's our rec center as a whole. I've had the opportunity to work with several of them, whether it's in scheduling, events, whatever it may be, clear across the board. And with the maintenance guys and Carl and Russ and all of those people, I cannot speak highly enough how hard our staff people through the rec center are working. And I guess my wish for this next year is that, maybe there could be a little more work together in that situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Turner, 131829. I'd like to remind you members of the governing board here and the community here in the room and online that during those budget presentations over the last few months, there was a list of savings which have come around due to the work of the staff. I think there's an impression here that the staff just spend all this money willy-nilly, don't care.
No.
They don't give a damn. There was a list of savings which have been produced over the last couple of years, and because I'm like that, I went to the trouble of counting it, and I believe it's 64 items. And I don't think included in that list was the work that HR did with our consultants and brokers on the health insurance. If they hadn't done that work, the fees would be going up by an additional $7 to $10 if they hadn't done that work. And I think the community, although it's a big increase, nobody likes to see it. I think it's probably the minimum we could get away with. And of course, we all expect social media now to be full of people saying the dues are going up $30. How come I didn't know about this? Well, as I say to people, you don't have to get involved, but please pay attention. Anyway,
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chris Waller, 140558. I'm just going to ask you to revisit the language when we were talking about the committee and the one committee. Take a look at section 2.2.2, I think it was. I think that kind of makes that you don't have to do it now, but I think it kind of makes that change irrelevant. The way I read that, it says if you're a member of any committee for 3 years, you have to stand down before you're a member of any committee again, which I think is the opposite of what you voted for.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. And I do want to give a shout out too, because I think, Cliff, you and I had this conversation too, but in my 3 years on the board, and I know I've said this over and over and over, and y'all are probably tired of hearing it, but this is by far the best budget put forward from day one that I've seen. If somebody had said, hey, here it is on day one, we have to pass it now or never, it would have, for me, it would have passed. But that being said, I believe we reduced the capital spend by 275,000 or right? Was that correct? So, or 325,000, 325 coming out. So, I mean, that was a big chunk to reduce the capital spend, then, basically. So that was really great. That was staff stepping up, Carl being able to say, hey, let's take a look at this, let's take a look at that. And the staff also, along the way, they come forward and they say, hey, we've looked at this, and repeatedly they're doing that along the way. We've looked at this, we've looked at that. We either, this can be pushed out another year, this can, we've worked on this, we don't need this. And that's how the budget is continually changing and moving along the way. And so, again, I just give major kudos to Cliff and the staff and for giving us such an outstanding budget, and I think making our job that much easier to being able to turn around and pass this budget the way it is. So I thank you for that. We do have a couple of online questions I think we need to answer. Alan?
Thank you. So first one is from Gary Bach, 135435. For clarification on CO3 updates, if someone spends 3 consecutive years on the same committee, they can then join a different committee without a 1-year stand down ? And you want to answer?
No.
If a person is selected to remain on a committee for 3 consecutive years, at the end of their 3rd year, they have a 1-year stand down.
Right. Next one is from Bruce Lees, 135422. And his comment is, I asked the board a question and then the other board member spoke about another topic and never answered my question. The board then subsequently voted to approve the budget without addressing my question. That is not fair, and I am disgusted that I was overlooked. And for a refresher, his question was with regard to the $500,000 positive cash flow, and why can't that be used to reduce the fees increase?
Director Rhodes?
First, the 500,000, by policy, any excess revenue will be transferred into the reserve fund. So the reserve fund is totally different than the operating fund, already? So I will give you the analogy of drawing from the reserve fund to support dues, which is an operating fund, is the equivalent of taking money out of your IRA to pay for groceries. I mean, you don't do that. Our reserve fund is our reserve fund. That's what keeps us financially healthy. So just as a point of information, $810,000 was the difference between the last year's dues and this year's dues. Is that's the addition, $810,000. So my point is where the money goes and where it comes from.
Well said. I like the analogy,
Right.
by the way. I thought that was very good. I will say too, we've got one indicator. It's 40% of our fully funded balance. That's in policy when it comes to our dues. And 40% of fully funded balance covers new capital spend as well, not just the repair and replacement. Now, our reserve fund, we don't have a separate fund for new capital. It's all one fund. So if we want to be healthy and have 40% for the replacement cost, 40% of the replacement cost for our items that we know are going to eventually need to be repaired and replaced, we need to go above that for new capital and new projects that we decide to do down the road. A lot of our new projects, if you look at the Lizard Acres, yes, it's a new project, but it's an enhancement to a facility. When we did R.H. Johnson Pool and spent millions of dollars doing that, that was an enhancement. It was a new project, but it was an enhancement to a facility. We don't spend a lot of money on new capital. We really don't. Even in this budget, it's $300,000 on $10.3 million. We don't spend a ton of money on new capital, and the new capital investments that we make enhance the current facilities that we have. They're just not on the repair and replacement schedule, so we call them new. So good point about the new capital. We need to look at that because when we add new capital, it adds to the reserve. Therefore, it adds to the repair and replacement, increases that fully funded balance. But We're not going out and buying property and buying buildings and creating actual new capital. Most of the stuff that we have is an enhancement when it's new, unless it's a new piece of equipment or something like that. But that generally creates efficiencies as well when we buy new equipment. So anyway, just 2 cents. And then finally, we don't want to come knocking on the door asking for a special assessment.
No.
We've never had to do that. We never want to have to do that. And that's all about having a reserve fund that's healthy, that you can lean back on. And when things happen with inflation, we've weathered inflation on our fully funded balance. It's amazing that we're at 50%. It really is. Think about it. Think about what's happened to inflation over the last 3 years. It's over 20%, and we're still 50% of our fully funded balance. That's not by accident. That's because we're making investments. We're doing the things that we have to do. And it's hard because this is a great place to live at a phenomenal value. People can't leave here and go live somewhere else for the same money. They just can't do that. But that makes it difficult. That doesn't change the fact that, you know, a $30 dues increase has a big impact on them. We understand that. We try to do our best in every area to be as efficient as we can, not just with labor, but also with what we're purchasing and the things that we're doing. So I want the community to know that, and great analogy, dipping into your IRA to pay for groceries. You don't want to do that. So anyway.
And thank you, Cliff. I appreciate that. And to Mr. Lees, I apologize. It did not happen on purpose, and hopefully that answers your questions. And Director Rhodes, one more.
Yeah, I
comment?
have one more comment, and this is really to kind of solidify some of Cliff's comments. By policy, our reserve fund, or our percent of FFB has to be between 40 and 70%. 40 and 70%. Now, when we get down into the 49, 47, we're getting dangerously close to the floor. And that's, and we don't want to be there. Nobody's going to get excited if we're at 65%, 60%. That's the acceptable range of our revenue, of our reserves, 40 to 70%. 49%, 50%, we're okay, but we still take a deep breath when we look at it. Okay? So, thank you.
So to Chris Waller's point, I had made myself a note to talk to Director Leary about CO3, because I too did not think that it was clear, and it seemed to have a conflict for me. So our governing board executive assistant was just pointing out to me that it does seem to have some inconsistency with that. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to postpone this, and we're going to not implement it. We're going to bring it back to the workshop for discussion. We're going to postpone action. Otherwise, we have to discuss it right now, versus taking action and moving it forward and implementing it. So I have to ask for consensus. Director Hurley, may I point out, you opened Pandora's box. So it is a one-word change, but if you look at the 2.2.2, now it affects that. If you read that, if you want to grab your policy, you'll notice that it affects that as well, and that's the note that I made to myself. By consensus, I would like to ask that we go ahead and postpone putting this into effect and readdress it with a revision to this, because it does not, what we would need to do is look at 2.2.2 and strike the last sentence that says, before serving on any standing committee again. And unless you look at your policy that you have,
A point of order on that, we voted on it.
Right.
In a meeting.
right?
So you don't
So
like
we-
it, so you're gonna,
No, I'm saying
Take it back?
if you look, it doesn't make sense, so we need to postpone putting it into action. Because it
highly
doesn't,
unregular.
and it doesn't make any sense, the policy itself, now with the one word you put back in there.
Then we should never have voted on it. So, Lisa, let's just put it into action.
You want to leave it as is and put it into action, and then go back and address it again,
Just like we did last time.
like we did the last time? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and do it that way. Leave it in. All right. No, okay. All right. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and the next workshop is June 14th, right here in the lecture hall, 9 a.m.